Welcome to episode 24 of 10 Minute Record Reviews. This time we're going to talk about Boston's eponymous 1976 debut. And I've got the first Canadian pressing from 1976, which on Epic, which sounds pretty darn good. So what to expect? Well, from Boston's debut, best-selling debut in history, Epic was the label and Epic are the songs. You're introduced right away to the Boston sound, which is hard rock, no mistake about that. But with a pop polish, and there's a kind of a resting point between hard rock and pop, which they achieve almost all the way through this album. The two most characteristic aspects of pretty much all the songs on here are two things: Tom Schultz's guitar army, Schultz is basically the brains and the driving force, partly also the shackles of this band as well. And then over top of all that amazing guitar work are Brad Delp's remarkable vocals, as a singer with an incredible range, incredible pitch, and a style which is almost impossible to copy. So this album, certainly when I was a kid, didn't get a lot of love from the cool kids. Even though it sold zillions and zillions and zillions of copies, it was often felt to be, by some, to be just the kind of corporate rock crap that we don't like, and so on. I think that's a really unfair treatment of this album for reasons I'll get into. And I think that people who have dissed this, I mean, people are entitled to their opinion, but my sense is that those who don't have much time for this record I think are probably misunderstanding the circumstances under which it came to be. Or they're jealous, or they're wrong. I don't know, but I like to think that it's maybe a little more familiarity with how this actually emerges should give one a little more empathy for the people involved. So again, it's a debut album which sells 25 million copies so far worldwide, which is a rare thing and kind of remarkable. It's impossible to understand Boston without getting to learn a little bit about Tom Schultz, and he is one of the bigger sort of guitar and tech nerds, in the history of rock and roll. He was an MIT grad. He's a guitar wizard, so to a degree, a lot in common with someone like, say, Brian May, but personality-wise, a little bit different. I think it's Schultz, a little more tightly wound than May. The band was originally known as Mother's Milk, and this was, when I say band, for so much of its early incarnation, the nucleus of what became Boston was Schultz and Brad Delp. And Schultz had a basement studio in Boston, which was tiny. Delp would record almost all the instruments for demos. Delp would layer over some vocals. They got turned down a lot, and eventually got a deal with Epic. Epic were really interested in the band, but were also kind of worried about the kind of Schultz's not unjustified sort of mad scientist image, where their fear was they were signing a group that sounded great through by the use of sort of multiple overdubs and multiple takes and so on in the studio, but we're not going to be able to reproduce this live in concert or perhaps in a sustained way or run of albums. So one of the things they did was they actually made, even though they were willing to sign them based on their demo, they still wanted to see the band perform, which they duly did before they were actually willing to get them on their way. So when Epic said, okay, let's go and record the album, the final version of the album, for a variety of reasons, Epic wanted them to go to LA and record with a producer that Epic had selected there. Schultz did not want to be replaced as producer, and did not want to be subject to somebody else's artistic vision, and so the band engages in this kind of elaborate ruse of persuading Epic that they have actually gone out to LA to record. Meanwhile, Schultz is basically doing all the polishing and finishing of the album in his basement studio in Boston, and that's how it comes to be. And Epic might have had their problems, but 25 million copies later, I guess there'd probably be a little argument. So side one, right away we're introduced to pretty much everything in the Boston sound. In the classic song, More Than a Feeling. So you get the layered guitars creating this absolute wall of sound. You have this balance of hard rock and pop melody. You have this really terrific singing by Brad Delp. I would just note too that if you ever get a chance to listen to his isolated vocals on some of these YouTube videos that folks do, it's worth it. It really is incredible. Not just the range he has, but his control of pitch all the way through that particular range. Really quite something. Then we're on to Peace of Mind, where you have more of the Tom Schultz guitar army, and this is a great sort of 70s stoner anthem. Who does want to live in competition, right? Not me. Then the third song and final song on side one is a mashup of two distinct pieces, and that's how it's titled: Foreplay and Long Time. And so Foreplay is kind of, well, I would say it was John Lord-esque, kind of a driven sort of overture. But if John Lord had played it, would have been a lot funkier. It's not particularly funky. It's kind of, it's intense. I know there's some people who like it. It's a little bit oppressive, I think, for me. And then it's followed by Long Time, which is a pretty good song, which has turned into a really good song by Delp's vocal performance. The issue here is I don't think that the mashup between these two particular pieces works, and I would much rather have had some other change of pace as a third song, followed by Long Time rather than this. This concept actually works a lot better, I think, on Van Halen's debut with Eruption leading into You Really Got Me. Here, these two songs they're not particularly simpatico, and I don't think this works. So I guess I'm saying I would dispense with Foreplay and look for an alternative. Side two begins as Rock and Roll Band. This is, again, it's yet another, and I think almost all of this album gets extensive FM radio airplay still. This is one of those songs. Lyrics are pretty phoned in. It's a good rock song. Lyrics are kind of phoned in. But it's rock and roll. It's not a high art. There you go. Smokin' I prefer a little better. It's chock full of 70s cultural touch points like Getting On Down Tonight and Token and so on. It's got some wonderful guitar playing and guitar textures. Really enjoyable tune. And Hitch a Ride is a great change of pace and a subtler, softer song, which I felt they could have done with. They could have taken that song and put it as a third song on side one. I think side one would have been a little bit stronger. I love Hitch a Ride. It's a great tune, and it's a great little window into the kind of the warmth with which Delp was able to deliver lyrics. Then we've got the last two songs, Something About You, pretty much the most forgettable song on the album, I think. This is where often these guys got, I think, tarred a little bit by being compared to Kansas or Styx, and I think they were a different thing than that. I think they were not some sort of corporate creation. They were not necessarily those bands were either, but they were really the result of a driven vision of one particular obsessive individual. But here, the inspiration is running a little bit dry, and by the time you get to their second or third album, you're starting to get more songs like this. And that Schultz has kind of shot his songwriting bolt here. So it's just okay, I think. And then finally, the album ends on a real high note, which is Let Me Take You Home Tonight, which is a great Delp song and a fantastic singing performance by the front guy. So the verdict here, I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. The fact that 75% of the whole album has been and probably will be on constant rotation, means whatever 25 million people who bought this record, I don't think can be wrong. It's all you need to know about the appeal. And I would say whatever the naysayers would observe about this, the fact that in Schultz and Delp you have these two stellar talents who are on this album are playing at their peak and playing some really well-crafted, well-written songs. It's not something that happens all the time. And as a consequence, this makes this an essential album in any rock and roll collection.